Hello Animorphs fans and welcome back to the Animorphs universe. We're looking at episode 3 of the Animorphs TV series today. The previous two episodes were called My Name is Jake Part 1 and Part 2. And this third episode is called The Underground. Why does it matter? Because the three episodes put together make up the story for Book 1, The Invasion. What's strange about this is the fact that this is should be a three-parter, and it does follow logically as if it were a three-parter from episode to episode, but this one changes the title and changes the narrator, because the previous two episodes have been introduced at this opening scene by Jake. This time it's introduced by Marco, and that would make sense if it made sense, but it doesn't. There's no reason for Marco to be the narrator for this episode, as we will see going forward. Why they've chosen this instead of having My Name is Jake Part 3 and have Jake introduce it again, I don't know why. I really do not. So that's the first quibble dealt with. The intro section proceeds as normal, where a character is walking suspiciously down a street, looking over the shoulder, etc, etc. And of course the director inserts random, arbitrary, slow motion segments. I think it's just to give a sense of unease, but it just doesn't work. And then Marco approaches Jake's house. And is it just me, or is there something awkward about the way Marco looks with that big orange coat? There's something, I can't quite put it into words, but there's something that just looks off about him. He looks like an adult pretending to be a child. And he sort of is, really. Because the Animorphs are meant to be like, what, 13, 14 years old? And Boris Cabrera is not. So I suppose it makes sense. And that haircut, I mean, come on, Marco. He's basically originated what I like to call the twat flap of the modern times. You know, that haircut where they sort of shave the sides, and it's like a bowl haircut, but they've always got like a little flap at the front. It's just a bit of hair that sort of flaps around like that. That's why I call it the twat flap. We'll keep that one. Tom then approaches Marco from behind, hesitates, walks back and then walks back again, according to the director. And then apparently does it all silently and manages to sneak up on Marco, adding that just little bit of suspense. Of course, we don't get treated to the suspense because we sort of feel him approaching several times. This, I believe, is the first time... Pretty sure, actually. It's been a while since I watched the first two episodes. I'm not doing these all in order, you know. This is the first time we see Jake's brother, Tom. And he's immediately put across as suspicious. Someone to be wary of. In just the way that he approached Marco there. You know, he approached... Went back a bit and approached again. God, I love this director. But you're immediately on the back foot with this Tom character. And that will proceed throughout the rest of the episode. In the books, they took the time about it. It was a bit more subtle. Here, it's just like you just immediately know something's off with this guy. There's no. We will see with this episode there is no subtlety to any of it. Tom, of course, has an actor who likes to put on the smarmy, arrogant high school kid thing on, and he does it to the point where it's almost hilarious. How smarmy can you get? Marco then enters Jake's room where all the other Animorphs seem to have gathered. It's interesting to point out the decor on Jake's wall. It's bizarre. There's a picture of Stonehenge. There's a big picture of a Native American. I think there's a picture of a woman from the woman from Pulp Fiction, it almost looks like. And then there's just a little note that says, "Say cheese." And then to top it all off, there is a garden gnome in the background. There he is. What is this? There's no consistency to his room decor at all. I remember when I was about that age, I had little cut-out posters of players from my favourite football team, along like in a line at the top over there. God, what else did I have? I had a poster with funny road signs. You know those sorts of posters where there's just like lists of funny things. And there was also a shooters list as well. So all the different shots you can make. Yeah, that was basically my room decor. You know, funny posters and football. This, I don't know what is going on. Stonehenge, say cheese, a Native American colour portrait, and a gnome. What's going on in this room? Jake then calls Marco the computer whiz.
Let's try this thing. You're the computer whiz.
And Marco then proceeds to place the Andalite disc, which appears to be quite literally a flat disc without the usual CD-ROM hole in the middle. The computer is able to see that there are files on this disc, but how? How? In order to see that it's got files on the disc, it must be able to read the disc. So a 90s human computer is able to read an Andalite disc that isn't even shaped like a proper disc. So I just don't understand. Maybe Elfangor deliberately made it out of a human disc, or at least to the size and shape, because as we know from the book series, he was on Earth, but it still just doesn't. I don't get it. Are they trying to imply that Elfangor had this disc and he took it from Earth, put data on the Andalite planet, and just made sure to keep it with him when he returned to Earth? Plausible, I suppose, but very far-fetched, and there's nothing to say that that is the case. You'd at least expect a clue somewhere in the series. Then again, they only made 26 episodes. Maybe they would... No, whatever.
Try Alt Escape X.
Jake then suggests Alt Escape X. Marco then proceeds to press K. Here, look, he presses K, so his finger's on K. Jake has just said, press Alt Escape X. There. See? Evidence! He double-clicks it. It's KK. He's predicted future internet speak. Who else used to type KK instead of OK? I did, back on the MSN days. It was weird. Does anyone still do that? I don't know. People just put LOL, don't they? They still use LOL, of course. The classic. Unfortunately for the Animorphs, this pressing KK doesn't work. We then get one of the first examples of the director having a quite serious off day, because two characters say two separate lines, and the video, the visual that we get, focuses on two different characters who aren't saying those lines, and it's cut perfectly so that it looks like it was always meant to be focusing on the people saying those lines. Just watch.
Oh man. What's going on?
What happened?
It's only a minor nitpick, but it's just... when you look at it and you notice it, you don't unnotice it, and it's just wrong. Then Tom comes in, says hello to everybody, for no apparent reason, and then he leaves. But as Marco goes to close the door, he notices, shock, horror, that Tom puts a finger in his ear. The ultimate betrayal. You even get the sad piano in the background, which means, uh-oh. And with Marco's face, there's a clear implication there that Marco now has his major suspicions about Tom. Else, what's this all about? So, Tom has given it the old... And Marco sees that and thinks, normal humans don't do that. They use cotton buds, even though they say on the package not to. What else are you supposed to clean your bloody ears with? Your only thing then is your finger. But then people are going to confuse you for invading space aliens. What's a man to do? See, this scene would be alright if it just sort of finished here, looking at Marco. But you get this weird bit where Marco looks at Tobias, who sort of looks really anxious, and he averts his eyes nervously. And then it cuts back to Marco, and then back to Tobias again. And you think... what's Tobias done with this scene? He hasn't said a word. Why is he the last thing we see in this scene? Before the intro comes in. What's that all about? The director is just clearly having a weird one. Why is Tobias the focus at the end of that scene? Why? So we get through the intro and we proceed with the story. And there's a very awkward walk out of the house to the middle of the driveway where nobody says anything. And you just think, just crack on. Why do you need this extended walk of shame outside of the house? There's a good 20 seconds or so of scene there where very, very little is said. In fact, it could be summarised as, can we think of anything? No. All right, see you tomorrow then. Just cut it down to size. And then we get a complete change of tone as Jake and Marco start to play some basketball. Tom comes out of the house and speaks to Jake and Marco after the other Animorphs have left and explains to them how he has quit the basketball team. Conveniently, just after Jake and Marco start to suddenly play basketball, once again showing that the director can't find subtle ways to move the plot along. And because Tom tells them that they've quit the team, Marco is quick to tell Jake that Tom is probably a controller.
You know all that stuff about how anybody can be a controller?
Yeah? What do you say? What are you saying?
I'm just saying that it's pretty weird that your all-star, all-state Mr. Basketball brother would suddenly quit playing hoops.
Yeah, so?
Unlike in the books and the graphic novel, Marco doesn't get punched by Jake, which in a way is a shame, in a way is a saving grace, because let's be honest, who wants to see Boris Cabrera get punched? But on the other hand, we really wanted to see Sean punch Boris. Just for Jake punching Marco scene. That would have been brilliant, but no, the show can't be doing that. Great face, Tom. I've landed on a really great pause there, haven't I? I think I'm going to save that one for the thumbnail. Print screen. Excellent. Cheers, Tom. After Tom has left this scene, I will admit, great little interaction between Jake and Marco. The bit where Jake brings up Marco's father is brilliantly done by the pair of them. A great line, and it leads nicely into the next scene.
Have you looked in his ear lately?
Hey, if you're looking for someone who's acting weird, why don't you start with your father?
This is yet another brilliant scene, including Marco and his father. There are a lot of them throughout this series. I've said it before, these are some of the best scenes in the whole series. The way that Marco and his father bounce off each other, how Marco's father portrays the grieving husband, and how Marco expresses both his craving for a normal family relationship again, but also his frustration at his father's lack of forward progress, his lack of being able to move on past the death of his wife. Some of the ways that Marco's father portrays this depression, it does resonate with cases I've seen. Just the facial expressions, the way that they react to comments, it's right. It's done very well, and I really approve of this scene. Best scene of the episode, without doubt. Followed closely by what we just saw with Jake and Marco. This is the best part of the episode. This little section we're at now. It gets worse from here. The camera at the end of this scene pans towards a photo frame. You never get too close into the photo frame, so it's actually very difficult to see what's in it. But then again, that might be because of the resolution of the version we have on YouTube. Sorry, it's not available on Amazon UK Prime, okay? Sorry. Sort it out, Amazon. I will buy it. Just make it available to me. Bastards. Frickin' Jeff Bezos and your money. I've got money. I'm Jeff Bezos. Out of it. What's funny is whenever I see this bit where it zooms into the photo frame, I'm reminded of an episode of a series I watched called The Dark. I watched it with my family 3 or 4 Christmases ago. It's actually, I believe, a German show. We watched one episode thinking, the summary looks interesting. And we watched the episode. And we never watched it anymore because it was awful. But you know what? It was awful to the point where sometimes it was funny. You know, that funny sort of awful? Like The Room, or the Christmas tree, or that animated Titanic movie. It's so awful that it's funny at times. And one of the things we noticed about The Dark is the end of every scene, it just panned, like it did here, just pans into a random photo frame. It just got to the point where you're like, why does it keep doing this? That time it wasn't even relevant. And there's also times where there was this kid in the family and everyone just kept hitting him. Just around the back of the head, they just clapped on the back of the head. And that was like, why do they keep hitting this child? It wasn't supposed to be funny, which is what made it funny. It just happened repeatedly. He's just there and someone comes and smacks him in the back of the head. You're like, what? Why? I might actually do a watch-along of that first episode just to remind myself of what I'm finding so funny. That'll probably be on a Monday video somewhere. That'll be fun. In fact, Raptor and Geek Truth, this is it now. You and me, we're going to sit down together and watch The Dark, and we're going to see how awful it is. That's it. I've decided. We move on to a scene with Tobias and Rachel as they approach Rachel's house. Rachel asks where Tobias lives, and Tobias explains,
I'm down on Grove with my aunt. Last year I used to live with his other uncle.
That confused me because he's new to the school, and he lived with his uncle last year. So he's been living here for this year. He's only just moved to the school. That doesn't seem right. This scene actually starts to develop quite nicely, and I think the interaction is very good. Not as good as the previous scenes, but it's... Considering it's Brooke Nevin and Christopher Ralph, two of the weaker aspects of the acting team, I'm afraid to say, they do pull it off all right. And then it just gets completely ruined by Rachel's sister, Sarah, with a camera. Completely ruining the tone and the momentum the scene was building. I always said that Jordan was the better sister. What's annoying about this bit in particular is that Sarah says, "I now have got a picture of your new boyfriend." And in the books, that just sort of develops naturally. But like with pretty much everything else in this episode, it's just, nah, sod subtlety. Where's the sledgehammer? Marco is then in the school. And I'm starting to understand why they had Marco be the narrator, because you'd say he's got the plurality of the scenes in this episode. So you got this bit as well as the dad scene. But then you also consider that a lot of this episode revolves around Tom, Jake's brother. So it still probably makes more sense for Jake to be the narrator. But we'll get more on that at the end. Marco is back in school. He does the most obvious turnaround attempt at avoiding Chapman. Just slide past him. You know, lower your head a bit and walk past. What is Chapman doing anyway? Is he deliberately chasing is this point to go find Marco? I don't know. Like with everything else in this episode, it's just so very forced. Because Marco is pulled over by Chapman because Chapman wants to tell him that his grades are dropping and that he almost threatens Marco. At least it looks like it. Look at the way he's standing.
You know, it always bothers me when the grades of one of our best students begin to drop.
Well, if I find that student, I'll tell him you said so.
Levity won't get you out of this.
This sounds like such a threat. What sort of vice principal? Not even like Marco's actual teacher. I mean, what is a vice principal? Do they have any power at all? Are they just a stand-in for when the principal gets hit by a steamroller or something? What does Chapman actually do? He's just walked down this corridor, found Marco and says, "If you don't buck up your ideas, it'd be a shame if your family were to catch fire. What's left of them?" He says Marco should get better friends. This all in front of the backdrop of a big banner saying "The Sharing." He also stamps at a lizard on the floor. Get the sledgehammers out, everybody. We need to put a message across. He started the scene walking towards Marco, and then he finishes the scene after talking to Marco going the other way. So what is he actually doing? Is he just wandering aimlessly? Take note as well that it's currently break time, or whatever they call it in America, recess, or Get your language right, America. There are students in this hallway doing random things, walking around, going to lessons or lunch or whatever. This does become relevant. Oh, and regards the sharing sign, just in case it wasn't punched into your eyeball enough, Chapman stops, looks up at it, reads it, and continues walking. Just in case you didn't get the message. Also, the elephant in the room, of the many. There are lots of elephants in this particular room, and it's a very small room as well, so they're really crammed in there. One of the biggest elephants in this room is Marco is one of the best students. That was never established in the books. Rachel was apparently one of the best students, so was Cassie. I think Jake was maybe as well. Basically, they're all A-grade students, and they're all the besties. Where's the representation for the absolute knobber who sits at the back of the room throwing paper airplanes? You know, he's a nice kid and all, but he just doesn't like paying attention in lessons and gets like D's and C's, like tops. Why must all our heroes be straight A students? That's discrimination. I'll sue you. I'm not just bitter because I got B's and C's. Not bitter at all. But do you know what else is even funnier about this particular scene? Chapman comes up to Marco and says, "Your grades are slipping." And the implication that I think it wants to put across is that since the whole Animorphs thing began, his grades have been going downhill. Oh, Chapman's going to start getting suspicious. Be afraid, Marco. It's been a day. It's been a day. At a stretch, 1.5 or 2. I'll give you 2, right? I'll be generous. You can have 2 days since the Animorphs project started. What's Chapman going on about? Your grades are starting to slip. I mean, you took a mock exam yesterday and you got a C. I'm watching you. Seriously? At least wait until episode 10 to bring up the Chapman's noticing the grades are slipping plot line, because here it doesn't make sense. They haven't had time to have their grades start dropping. Elfango didn't come down and say, right, here's the morphing power. By the way, it takes up 30% of your brain capacity, so 30% is going to fall out the other end, okay? You know, if you did a mock exam tomorrow, you just wouldn't have a clue.
You remember Julius Caesar lesson yesterday? Yeah? Gone. Forget it, right? You're morphing now. Also, I'm dying. I can't morph at all.
Why have you suddenly increased... What is this? What's going on? Why are you on my screen? Ah! I don't want that! What's going on? It's a slideshow. Why has it started a slideshow? You watch what folder you go into, computer! Ah, Bill Gates, what a perfect place to end it. There we go, I'm back there. What happened? Anyway, there was a lot to say about that one particular scene. There was a lot wrong with it, and things can only get better. Somebody tell me what Marco says here.
Oh, what are you kidding? I live for science lab makeups, bro. I live for science lab makeups, bro.
I live for science and Magos, bro. The director needs to go to Marco and say, come on, mate, speak up when you're doing your lines. Marco and Jake meet up in the science classroom. This is where Marco says, I live for science, and... Jake has immediately forgiven Marco for his accusation of Tom being a controller, which it does seem a bit rushed, but it's not that important. There's a lizard there, and that's going to be important because they are about to morph that lizard. Now, everybody pay attention. It's a skink. It's a skink. That's not relevant to the rest of this episode, but further down the series, it will become relevant. You just wait and see. Speaking of relevant, remember how we said that the hallways outside were busy, all the students are walking around going to classes and what have you? Apparently no longer the case. From inside this classroom and behind a closed door, Jake and Marco overhear Chapman talking to some ginger kid. Apparently Ron Weasley here is another controller. It goes without saying at this point in the episode that you know what's going to happen. There's going to be some expositional. That's the word I'm looking for. Expositional language from Chapman saying, firstly, Ron, have you seen the Andalite bandits? Well, if not, then find them. small child in a school. Also, I'm going to have a look at the pool entrance. You just see if I don't. And this is what you can assume is that this is like after recess. Maybe all the kids have gone back to their classes. How else are Jake and Marco going to hear Chapman and Ron Weasley discussing this evil Yerk scheme from behind a closed door on the other side of the hallway? How are they going to hear it unless the rest of the hallway is completely silent? And also, why would Chapman not have his voice lowered? Why is he announcing that we're conducting an evil scheme? As we move forward, you see that the halls are still very, very busy. At tops, you're looking at 5 minutes later, and everyone's walking around in the hallway again. I will say it's particularly smart of Jake and Marco to morph Lizard and run around in a busy hallway during this break or whatever it is. Anything to get hold of that expositioning Chapman who was announcing this to the school that he was going to do an evil thing. My God, this episode. Jake actually says here, it's between classes. It's between classes. How long do classes last in America? Because according to this, about 10 seconds. Because Marco got spoken to by Chapman and everyone was walking around, so it must have been between classes. Then they go into the classroom. He goes into the classroom with Jake alone. And Chapman's talking outside in an empty hallway. So quiet you can hear a pin drop and a Yerk make an evil scheme and twiddle their mustache. And then they morph and go outside again and it's between class. And they're following Chapman. So Chapman couldn't have gone far. So what's going on, director? Explain, please. And of course, the Animorphs don't stick to the walls where it might be safer. They run around in the middle of the hallway around tree-like legs everywhere. They find Chapman as he's going into the janitor's closet. And this made me laugh so hard. This is incredible. Have you ever seen the Blair Witch Project? Remember at the end of that movie, spoiler alert if you haven't watched the Blair Witch Project, it's not much of a spoiler because there's basically no plot to the film. So what's there to spoil? They go into this building at the end and one of the cast is just standing facing a wall, just perfectly still, just waiting. That's what happens here. Chapman is unlocking the janitor's door. The door is locked. He steps in. And who do we see in the background staring at a wall? Look, he's there. Chapman's just unlocked the door, walked in, and Tom is standing up against the wall. Well, to be fair, a stepladder, and just looking at it. Not only that, but it takes him a few seconds. Look at this.
Is everything ready for tonight?
Everything's arranged.
It isn't till the Animorphs have run in, and Chapman asks,
Is everything ready for tonight?
that Tom finally decides, I must divert my attention away from the stepladder now and turn around menacingly. If only I had a mustache to twirl. What was he doing? Was he just standing in the middle of the janitor's closet? The door's locked. The Yerk pool's not open. So he probably hasn't just come out of the Yerk pool. He's just standing there. As if he's been waiting for Chapman in this locked room, staring at a ladder. Like there. I sure hope I'm not acting strangely right now. Honestly, what is the director on in this episode? Everything about the direction is wrong. The characters, great. Awesome. The actors, yeah, you're doing a pretty damn good job. The script could be worked on, but you know what? It's all right. The director, boy howdy, you've had a nightmare. We're then introduced to the process by which the Yerk pool is opened. Chapman and Tom then have a discussion, during which Chapman says, it's been 3 days, regeneration should begin tonight. And there's a lot of implications from this, especially for the book readers, because in the books, the controllers didn't have like a single time for everyone to go down to the pool. It was very much a case of, yeah, you fed on Tuesday, therefore Friday you're back in, you fed Tuesday evening, you fed Wednesday morning, blah, 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 and just come in when you're next ready to come in. That's what it seemed like. There was no right, all you yerks, you're in on Friday midday, right? Don't miss it. Here it's implied almost that all the yerks go in at the same time, which is sort of what we do see in this episode later down the line. Nobody's going into the pool now. We can assume Tom's not, he's just staring at a ladder. And later on in the episode, all of these controllers are marching single file to this entrance. Bizarre. One thing I always complain about with the TV series is the scope, the feel, the perspective, because it feels so much smaller because of your perspective on it. And this, I believe, is another example. If you just said, right, all the yerks go in at one time, you're not going to expect many yerks to be there, because else you're going to have all these masses of people suddenly disappearing for several hours at a time with no explanation. Whereas in the book series, people went in at random times whenever was convenient for them individually, and so you weren't going to notice that mass disappearance of people. Here it's almost like it's the sharing. The sharing is the one way to be a controller, effectively, because the sharing meeting is when they all go down to the yerk pool. Which, to be fair, in the books, yes, but the sharing was just a single front. A single front. Here, it's the be-all and end-all for the yerks, according to the TV series. Basically, if you're not in the sharing, you ain't part of the club. Which technically is true, but you know what I'm saying. It just makes it feel smaller to me, and I hope I've explained why. Chapman then says that they've got 50 new members from the sharing to go down to the pool tonight. Which is strange, because what we'll see later is that when they go down to the pool, they're all, except for one possibly, they're all emptying their yerks into the pool, so they wouldn't be the new members. It's just, it's weird. It's weird. Director, come on, step up, mate. But then there's this emphasis put on Jake from Chapman.
50 new members from the sharing. But your host's brother is not among them. Why?
And I don't believe the same emphasis was put on him in the books. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Chapman goes up to Tom and says, why isn't your brother part of this, eh? Why are you taking so long to get him? Why is there this emphasis on this one teenage boy? Again, it comes down to making the series feel smaller than it actually is in the books. It doesn't help that Tom says,
Jake has a very strong will. He may be a problem for us.
since when in Animorphs was a random teenage boy not being infested a problem for the yerks? Again, it just makes it feel so much smaller. Not just visually, as we'll see with the yerk pool, it looks so much smaller than it is in the books, but in the things they say as well. The way things are portrayed, everything is just so much smaller and less intimidating, less effective. Chapman then notices Jake and Marco and picks up Marco, who cries out in peril. Oh, actually, it's more sort of, Jake, give us a hand, mate.
Jake, help!
Director, tell Marco to give it some bollocks. None of this namby-pamby, yoo-hoo, Jake, I appear to be in some form of peril, please do help me. No, give him some, just make him shout, please. Will it break the microphones if he just raised his volume a tad? And then we once again get Chapman saying how these lizards are disgusting creatures.
Nasty little creature. Disgusting creatures.
Why? Oh, is that just so that it makes Chapman look like he doesn't like animals? I suppose. But it's just weird that this emphasis was put on this particular statement or idea that he has of these creatures. Marco drops his tail, Chapman leaves and locks Tom back in the closet. We can assume. Tom just looks very concerned when Chapman leaves. Oh, maybe he didn't lock him in the closet, but what was the point? What was the point? Why was Tom in the closet? Chapman was talking very, very nicely and freely to Ron Weasley in the hallway. He got the point across. What was the point of Tom being in the closet and Chapman going to see him in said closet? Oh, I know what the point was. It was to get the plot moving along, so that Jake and Marco could see the entrance and hear what they had to say. I mean, sometimes I complain about plot contrivances in the book series, but my God, comparatively, it's book Song of Ice and Fire levels, the Animorphs book series, compared to the TV show when it comes to plot contrivances. It really is. One of the things we achieved from that scene is confirming to Jake that Tom most definitely is a controller. So now we move on to the next scene, which is effectively the garden scene, but it's not really.
At least now we know that the Yerks need some sort of booster treatment every 3 days.
And we know a way into this pool, whatever that is.
Yeah, you'd think that Alfangor would have given us an instruction manual or something.
I will give the TV show some credit here, because in the books, Tobias basically gets telepathically delivered, like in an email, the information regarding the Yerk pool and the Chondrone arrays. It was a big plot contrivance and naughty book. Learn your lessons. At least the TV series tries to make the receiving of that information like legitimate, and rather than just, oh yeah, by the way, Elfangor implanted all these ideas into Tobias' head. At least the TV series thinks, right, we need to find a more convincing way to do that. But they failed. It was worth the effort. Give them credit for putting the effort in to try. They tried. So this is where Cassie's mum works. A big fence in the middle of a field. We get the really cliche joke of two people talking about jumping over this fence and doing this darish deed. And then the other characters appear on the other side of the fence holding a key and saying, why didn't you just unlock the door? It's so cliche and just get out of it. Just stop. We then suddenly emerge into tiger territory, this big cage. And it is basically a big cage with no features. Cassie's mum sure likes putting them in good enclosures. Jesus. Well, to be honest, it's Michael Hackenberger, who has a questionable record. Anyway. Remember that stupid Rachel is a thing in the TV series? Well, we see the same again here, because they walk up to a tiger enclosure with a big bugger-off tiger sitting on a bunch of bales of hay with no obstruction, and she says, what is that?
What is it? It's a white Bengal tiger.
Did you not read, like, the ABC book when you were 1? T for tiger. That was like... What percentage of ABC books would have tiger under T? Probably 40%, I'd say. Probably. It's like one of the first animals you learn about. Dog, cat, elephant, tiger, right? It's one of the top 10, surely. And Rachel, what is that? Get out of it. There's then this really weird part, and I can't pull it apart. Obviously, Rachel has just asked, from the corner eating her crayons, what is that animal? And Cassie says, tiger. And of course we know from the last episode that Cassie is the one that is teaching them how to go through the morphing process, the acquiring process, even though in the previous scene Jake has acquired a lizard, so he knows perfectly well how to do it. Cassie is still running him through it. You just got to touch it to acquire its DNA, Jake. Remember, I'm Cassie. She said, I think it's Cassie. And this is important. Remember, all you have to do is touch it to acquire its DNA. And then Cassie says, just make a f-f sound. But the problem is, the sentences overlap. So before the end of sentence 1, sentence 2 begins. Listen.
Remember, all you have to do is touch it to acquire its DNA. Just make a fuffer sound.
Now, the simple argument here, the most obvious one, is one of those lines was from Rachel. Firstly, it's quite hard to tell their voices apart when they're just speaking normally. Secondly, Cassie's the one that instructs him. For this whole thing, she's the one that's been instructing on how to do it. So it makes sense that she'd be the one to say, remember that you just have to touch it to acquire its DNA. I mean, Rachel's in the corner eating her crayons, not even knowing what a tiger is, so she's... whatever. So logically, that's Cassie saying that. The next part is make a fuffer sound, which then Cassie proceeds to make. And of course, Rachel doesn't even know what the animal is, so how would she know to make a fuffer sound? So that's definitely Cassie. So I think they're both Cassie lines, and they overlap. Of course, the cameraman isn't focusing on her while she's doing this, but it seems really bad editing, because I don't think Rachel's saying either of those lines. And even if it is Rachel saying the first line, remember to touch it to acquire its DNA, that just makes it funny, because remember how in the first episode nobody paid attention to what Rachel said and they just fobbed her off every time. She would say something or ask a question like, so how's it going today? And someone will either just tell her to shut up or just not answer a question. If it is Rachel saying this, remember to touch it to acquire its DNA, Cassie's just like, nah, you can't even finish a sentence. I'm going to say the next thing without you finishing your sentence. Remember, Jake, to make a fuffu sound. Poor Rachel. But yeah, something is wrong with this bit. It's either one or the other. Also, Cassie is giving Jake instructions on acquiring the tiger after letting him into the cage. Seems very dangerous. And it does make you wonder, is Demon Cassie in control of this situation? That would explain why she can speak over herself, because you know demons, you know, they don't follow the normal procedures of biology and physics and whatever have you. They have like those double voices sort of thing. And then you get the part where Jake is acquiring, you just see the camera goes to Cassie in the background just, yes.
Yes.
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.
Jake carefully, very carefully and steadily and cautiously approaches this tiger and acquires the DNA and slowly backs away. We then cut to Rachel casually strolling away from a lion. Not only that, but they stand at the gate with their backs turned. And that includes Demon Cassie. It just completely ruins the tone. The tone that they're trying to set is that this is a very dangerous situation that they're doing. A very dangerous thing, but the reward is high. So yeah, it's trying to add that bit of tension. The next thing you know, Rachel is just supermodeling it out of this line enclosure. Yeah, I did it. Yeah, look at me. And there's just absolutely no caution as to what's going on behind them. There's a freaking dangerous animal in there, Cassie. I know you're doing it deliberately, trying to end the world, but by God. Also, I just want to point out that Rachel calls herself Rachel the Lion-Hearted.
Rachel the Lion-Hearted.
It's quite clearly a reference to Richard the Lionheart. The Lionheart, not the Lion-Hearted. Jesus Christ. But then again, this is stupid Rachel, so of course she's going to get it wrong. And who calls himself brave? I mean, no. Not even firefighters will come up to you and say, my name's Fireman Sam the Brave. No, you just come across as a bit of a pillock. How comes Rachel? Yeah, they call me Rachel the Lion-Hearted, yeah? Oh, Jesus Christ. If you're going to say it, at least get it right. That was a King of England, I'll have you know. Then again, they're in frickin' Canadiashire or whatever it's called. God damn it. Worst county. And the worst part about this whole acquiring the morphs scene, and especially regarding the walking casually out of the lion enclosure, the other animals don't get big morphs. They don't, unless they just never use them. So Jake has been able to go into this tiger enclosure and acquire it without a problem. Rachel has acquired a lion without a problem, to the point where she just turns her back and strolls out, you know, giving it all that. And not one of them puts her hand up and says, right, next person, let's make sure we all have that morph. No, it's just Jake and Rachel get their super duper morphs. Everyone else, screw you. I mean, of course, I get it. We're not going to get a gorilla morph because Michael Hackenberger probably didn't have a gorilla, or at least not one that was capable of being put into a TV show. At least just replace Marco's gorilla morph with the tiger morph again. You won't be able to have them both in the same scene unless you use green screen, which they do. Just give them all big cats. Something other than what Marco usually uses. I know he morphs a wolf at some point, but that's about it. Give him something else. I don't freaking know. An octopus. Why did the animals never use an octopus morph? That would have been freaking awesome. Probably not suitable to most environments, but god damn it, at least try, TV series. You tried earlier, and then you've just stopped, haven't you? You gave up. Pathetic. TV show The Unlion-Hearted. Next up, they're gonna go down to the Yerk pool. We get a shot of the controllers going towards the Yerk pool, and they're all walking in single file. It's not like this in the book series, and it just makes them look like automatons or part of a hive mind, and I just don't like it. It gives the wrong feel. Also, who's the woman breathing in the background throughout this soundtrack? Why is there a woman breathing in the background of this soundtrack? Is this some weird ASMR thing? It's not hard for the Animorphs to blend in because the controls are all walking in single file without speaking a word to each other, as they are now clearly as they are now clearly all automatons. Makes it a whole lot easier, doesn't it? The Animorphs descend into the Yerk pool with the other controllers as the great regeneration is about to begin. Visser 3 watches on from the construction site before almost immediately heading back to his chambers to conveniently be out of the picture while he needs to be.
We have many hosts to regenerate tonight. I will be in my chambers. Notify me when it is done.
The Animorphs see Visser 3 move away, and then Cassie is pulled to one side and Marco to another. So apparently the controllers down in the Yerk pool controlling things there are making separate lines arbitrarily because they're clearly not controllers to us, so they wouldn't be recognised. So there'd be no way for the Yerks to say, right, your Yerk X and your Yerk Y, so Yerk X's all go over here and all Yerk Y's go over there. They just arbitrarily pull them in different directions. And then we see a line of controllers looking down over the pier into the Yerk pool. And you remember how I said that the things seem so much smaller in scope? Well, this is where it visually looks smaller in scope. This Yerk pool looks tiny compared to what goes on in my head when I'm reading the books, because it's described as many football stadiums in size. This looks like, I don't know, a village hall in size. You can hear one of the controllers saying regeneration line here.
You, stay in the regeneration line, over there.
So there are distinct lines. So the Animorphs are going to go to the regeneration line, which means they have to drop their Yerks into the pool. We then see the laser grids holding back a whole bunch of controllers who apparently aren't part of this particular regeneration cycle, and they're being guarded by a Hawk Bajir in front of the laser grid. Something that we didn't have in the books. They were in cages, like physical cages. Does the laser grid work better? I get it. Well done, TV series, for trying something new. I think I know why they do it, because it makes it easier for there to just be a button somewhere that you press so that the grid turns off. I wonder if they ever do that in this series. Anyway, the Animorphs are waiting in the regeneration line, and all the controllers are getting back up and starting to scream and fight. But if you go back to the start when we first saw this line, the first woman just casually strolls off as if nothing's wrong. Now you could say, well, she must have been a voluntary host. I don't think we're even introduced to that concept in this TV series, so it just looks weird. It's just, she decides, no, I'm just gonna stroll away, this is grand. The Animorphs then see Tom dispose of his Yerk into the pool, and this, in the books, show the Animorphs that he wasn't a voluntary controller, but of course we haven't been introduced to that concept in the TV series, so it's not as impactful. It's just then, oh look, we've just confirmed again that he's a controller, even though he did it 5 minutes ago. Like, he said he was. It just loses its impact, I'm afraid to say. We then have Mr. Muscle Security, Yerk Security, wander up to the Animorphs specifically. He goes past a whole bunch of other people and goes specifically to the 4 Animorphs who aren't Cassie, and tells them to get in line. What's weird about this is they were put there in the first place. Remember, they took Cassie one way and then they took Marco the other way. And all of these controllers and the Animorphs were made to stand here. So now they're just getting conflicting information from the controllers. Why? I don't know, they're just bad at organising, I suppose. But Mr. Macho Security, you know, he's the one who's in charge. He's come up and said, hey, why aren't you in line? Get over there. He gets squared up to by this utter weed Tobias, who just goes up to him and says, yeah, what are you going to do about it? And he's like, whoa, all right, don't want to mess with you. And he backs away. What a useless security. Get out of it, mate. Useless. He just buys this thing. He buys it because, oh, he's scared of Visser 3. Get out. No. Plus, I don't think Christopher Ryan sells the hard man thing. It is like, I'm going to tell my mum on you. Just keep him as the weird, mysterious one in the background. Don't make him this fiery, oh, I'm going to stand up to you, big strong man. Nah, it just doesn't work. Don't bother. So the Animorphs have defeated the most useless security guard in all of existence. And having mastered this challenge, having asserted their dominance, they then move away from where they're standing and go hide in a corner. Not a Yerk bats an eye as the Animorphs slowly walk away and find something to slouch behind. You'd been better off just staying where you were. You've already shown this fumbling, bumbling macho idiot that you can just stand there without being impeded. Why do you have to go and slink away into this corner and crouch behind something? Precious. Why? You didn't need to do that. Why? I mean, look at them. They're going to look suspicious doing that. They were perfectly fine where they were before. You could say, oh, but they had to plan to save Cassie. They could just move away 2 meters and whisper to themselves. Tobias is apparently now Mr. High in command, according to the security guard now, so why can't he do that instead of doing this? It does allow the plot contrivance of them being able to sneak away so they can't be seen, I suppose. If they can see Cassie from here, then somebody can probably see them. And there's a lot of people around. Cassie then decides that it's a lost cause trying to fight this, and despite all the empty space around her, she decides to just put herself in a very vulnerable position. The Animorphs then decide to sneak away and morph their battle morphs, which of course means Tobias going hawk, Rachel going lion, Jake going tiger, and Marco vanishing completely. Unless, of course, you count the 2 lions that appear coming down the staircase. Maybe Marco morphed the lion and they just emerged from the same hole. I don't freaking know. Anyway, Cassie has this bright idea of using one of the stones beside her to imitate a Yerk, but it turned out that she didn't even need to do that at all, because the very next second, out pops 2 lions from the wall, and she is saved. So we didn't need the whole, oh, there's a rock bit. We could have just avoided that part, honestly. Demon Cassie then decides to defeat a man twice her size and push him into the Yerk pool, just like the lion did.
Get your mortal hands off of me.
Visser 3 appears back in the construction site to wonder what on earth is going on out there, and then proceeds to take no action whatsoever. After vanishing and realising that he didn't actually have a battle morph, Marco decides instead to use his tech savviness that we established at the start of the episode to power off the grids holding the freed hosts. Yes, that tech savviness we were shown at the start of the episode when he mistook an X for a K. Apparently, barely knowing how a keyboard works is enough tech savviness to know how a Yerk computer interface works. Because he walks right up to the machine and presses the exact button he needed to press in order to open the laser grids on these cages. And it's not as if he's seen the guard do it before, because the laser grids have never been turned off yet. So it's complete guesswork on Marco's part, and a very risky bit of guesswork as well. Plot contrivance. There's more of it, right? You see? There. Plot contrivance. Bad. And instead of just flicking the switch back on, the guard in front of the machine just runs away. The Hawk-Bajir guard, who was there assumedly to stop hosts escaping, is unable to stop hosts escaping. And this is the part you think, well, where did all of these hosts come from? Because they couldn't have been from the school. So it must have actually been from a different part of the town, which does contradict what we saw earlier, making it seem as if the sharing is the one big recruitment area, because else where did all this lot come from? Only about 3 people from the school have been regenerated so far. But the thing is, they all seem to head toward the exit that the Animorphs came from, which is the school, which would imply that they came from the school. So it probably would have been the same group. Is that the only entrance? I don't know. I really don't know. By this point, the Animorphs have all demorphed. Jake reappears. We don't even know if he morphed or not. Rachel's definitely demorphed somewhere down the line. How they managed to lose a lion and allow it to demorph, your guess is as good as mine, honestly. But then Jake thinks, yes, this is the perfect time. The hosts have now escaped. It's the perfect time for me to morph my tiger. What's Tiger Jake going to do? Well, he's going to find he's going to find the sole black host running away, and he's going to chase him back into the pool. You get back there! Who said you could get out? And that's it. That Jake's whole thing is morph a tiger, chase a random controller back into the Yerk pool facility, and then that's it. That's why he morphed the tiger. Nothing else. The guard who is at the computer interface decides he's had enough running away and he's going to come back to close the door, as Chapman requests. The door that we haven't seen prior to this. We never established that there was a door that the Animorphs passed through to get down to the Yerk pool. We know that there's a door to the janitor's closet, but this is clearly not the same door. Only Cassie and Rachel are able to escape, and because apparently they were faster than everybody else, and everybody else is rounded up and recaptured. And then Jake reappears back in his human body, having chased that one controller back into the... not even controller. That one freed host chased him back into the Yerk pool, said, right, now you stay there. Proceeds to demorph and then leaves. What is going on? Why didn't he stay in morph? He's just made himself vulnerable again. Why have you done that, Jake? Chapman gives chase and is probably about 5 meters behind Jake. I mean, you can see Jake's shadow passing in front of Chapman as he turns this corner, so he's really, really close. Maybe no more than 1 or 2 seconds away from him. Jake then reaches the door, having apparently gained another 10 seconds or so head start on Chapman, somehow. He uses that time to speed morph into his skink morph. Chapman realizes that Jake has disappeared and that there's no Andalite bandits around for him to capture. That's when Vista3 finally decides to step into the fray.
We did our best.
You have failed once again.
You watch that scene and tell me that that was not a death scene. How is that not Chapman's death scene? It's clear, it's in every way an implication that Chapman failed Vista3 and was killed as punishment, or at least severely wounded. But as you will see in the next coming episodes, that's not true. Nothing actually happens. Vista3 clearly just grabbed hold of his neck, caused Chapman to scream, and then said, actually I'll just let you go. Sorry, my bad. Maybe they initially wanted to kill Chapman, then a couple episodes later they think, bring him back, bring him back. It's clearly a death scene. It goes as far to the point where we actually see him dead. That's the only thing that's missing from that scene, is like the absolute confirmation that he's now dead. Everything up to that point is clear, leading that way. But it doesn't happen. Stop leading me down the garden path, show. The Animorphs escape and find their way to a place called Gillen Court. Not that that's relevant at all. And then we get Marco's narration. Once again, why did it have to be Marco? It should probably have still been Jake. Call it My Name is Jake Part 3. It's the only thing that makes sense. Why did you change it? Marco then does his inner monologue as a response to Jake saying, "You okay?" Which probably from Jake's perspective is very, very odd, just the way Marco starts to smile to himself rather than answering his goddamn question. And one thing you'll notice about the Marco in the TV show at this point is that he doesn't have the reluctance of Marco in the book series. In the book series, every other time Marco spoke, it was basically, we shouldn't be doing this, this is too much for us, I care too much about my father, I'm taking a step back. We got a bit of that in the last episode when then they were learning how to morph. He said, how would my father react? Now Marco he's along for the ride, he's having a great time, he's showing no reluctance at all. This carries on, I believe, for a good few episodes of Marco just being part of the team, as if he were just there and not being reluctant at all. And I'm pretty sure later down the line, there comes an episode where it just flips it again, and he's suddenly, oh, we shouldn't be doing this, we shouldn't be doing this. It's weird, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Just keep it in mind for now that he seems to be quite happy in his role with the team. Not happy, but he's happy to perform the role. The Animorphs take stock in the fact that they've all escaped the Yerk pool. All 5 of them. And it's implied that this red-tailed hawk has followed them from the school to this stop at Gillen Court. Remember that red-tailed hawks are not nocturnal. They are diurnal, meaning they do things during the day. So why is this hawk following them from the school to Gillen Court? What makes me say that it's followed them from the school?
That's not him.
What? You mean I've been talking to a bird all the way back?
Marco says, I've been talking to a bird all the way back, implying that for the entire duration of them escaping the school, this hawk's been with them. This diurnal creature, at night, is following this group from the school to Gillen Court, and only at the appropriate, convenient moment decides, oh, now I'm going to fly away now that you've realised I'm not the hawk you think I am. What a stupid freaking plot. It probably is Tobias, and I'm being serious now. It probably was Tobias. He just didn't want to speak to them and just flew away. It's the only thing that makes sense. You're not going to get a random hawk. I keep saying red-tailed hawk. He's actually a freaking Harris hawk in the TV series, I believe. You get this hawk following them from the school to this sign. And they say as much, that the bird's been with them that whole time from running back. A random hawk is not going to do that. At night. Why would it? There'd be no reason for it to. The only explanation is that it is Tobias, and he just doesn't answer them, and he has one of his, oh, I'm mysterious and weird moments, and then just flies off. That's the only reasonable explanation, so I'm calling it. That is actually Tobias. And you could say, well, Marco has only just started talking to the bird, but maybe he was exaggerating, saying, oh, I've been talking to the bird this whole way. But they know that they're a group of 5. And they stop in the middle of the road with 4 of them there saying, oh, we all escaped. And there was no point at which they said, oh, look, there's that bird there. That must be Tobias. No, it's as if the bird's been with them the whole time. So, yeah, it has. So I don't know what you're trying to do, show, but I'm the only thing providing reasonable plot to this. You're not giving it to me. I'm having to make it up in my own head. I'm having to justify what you do. Shouldn't have to do that. Anyway, the Animorphs then wander down the road, down Gillen Court, crying, Tobias, Tobias, wherefore art thou?
I've been shouting his name for hours. Wilson, Wilson.
I'm sure he'll turn up, Jim.
But what if someone's raped him?
That's the end of the episode. And what an episode it was. It's the weakest of the episodes so far, I believe. There were a couple of very good scenes in there, towards the middle, but it's nothing that the previous 2 episodes didn't equal or better. And this one, the director has had a real off day here, for a number of reasons, and I've pointed them all out. Something about this episode just sent the director loopy, and he just did whatever the hell he felt like. Everything feels small, insignificant. Why was Marco the narrator? It should have been Jake, because his brother was a large part of this plot, more so than anything Marco did. Yeah, the episode was just a bit of a mess, and it could have been done a lot better, should have been done a lot better. It tried a couple of things, failed at those couple of things. And there's not much else to say. Weakest episode so far. I'm sorry. Let's hope for better next time, although I'm pretty sure that the next episode focuses on the Andalite disc, so it's bound to be lower quality. Hello Animorphs fans, just very quickly, I went through, I'm currently editing this, this video that you're watching now. And I realised after the first episode I said, oh, I'm going to look at people's comments on these videos. And I think I forgot the last episode, and I forgot while recording this one. My apologies. It's all new process to me, so sorry for forgetting. But yeah, I'm going to look at recent comments on the past 2 episodes. Just the very recent ones. Oh no, I think I actually did do it for episode 2, didn't I? Yeah, I did. Yeah, the table Applebee's is ready. I've done that one. Maybe I haven't been forgetting, but I definitely did forget to do it for this video here. So, the first thing I noticed is Medi. I see you, Adam. Yes, I see you too. I see you too very much, Medi. Jesus. Hope you're doing well. Cameron Christopher Polnitz 7456 says, Tobias, is that you in the hank? I don't know what a hank is. Somebody please let me know. 1235 Doom 1. I don't understand. What was Doom about that? Yeah, this is something I noticed from Finn's contingency plan 7001. The shot at 1707 is exactly the same as the shot of Vista in the first episode. They just reused that footage. And then someone said the ending is so bad. Basically, the stuff that I said in the last episode. Please do go to episode 4 and leave your comments on there, because I'll do a proper run through of comments on that one. You know, I want you to know that I'm going to be looking at the comments, so you can get in there early and say, Adam, you have an excellent sense of style. Yes, somebody better write that now. You better write it, and you better not say anything about my hairline. Thank you very much for watching. Back to me saying bye in the previous recording, so have fun with old me. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. Remember to like, subscribe, join as a member if you want this content early access. Thank you very much for watching. I shall see you somewhere else in the Animorphs universe. Ta-ra.